The backyard smelled of grilled burgers and sweet corn on the cob, a blend of summer comfort and celebration. Strings of lights hung from the oak trees, glowing softly against the early evening sky. A large banner stretched across the back fence. "Congratulations, Connor." Neighbors, relatives, and friends filled the patio with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. I leaned against the deck railing, watching my stepson, Connor, move through the crowd with his cap tilted back and a beer in hand. 19 years old. Tall, lean, confident, at least on the surface. It was supposed to be his day. His mother, Diane, had tears in her eyes all afternoon, pride spilling out with every hug she gave him. Even his biological father, Roger, had shown up 40 minutes late, but loud enough to make everyone notice. Roger had already downed 3 beers, bragging to anyone who would listen about his glory days and the big promises he loved to make but never keep. I stayed quiet, like I often did. That was my way with Connor. I didn't force myself into his world, didn't try to replace the father he insisted was irreplaceable. Instead, I just showed up. For 6 years, I had been there, at soccer games, late-night study sessions, college application deadlines. I'd added him to my insurance when he needed a car, paid for his phone when he wanted the newest iPhone, even stayed up past midnight editing his essays because he said he wanted a real shot at college. I never asked for thanks, never demanded the word dad. All I wanted was to see him succeed. But the atmosphere shifted when his girlfriend, with a teasing smile, asked, "So, what's your relationship like with your stepdad?" Connor laughed, not just a chuckle, a loud, sharp laugh that cut through the chatter and turned heads. "Father, son? Please," he said, smirking, gesturing toward Roger. "He's just my stepdad, trying to buy his way into being important. My real dad is right there." The patio went silent. The only sound was Roger's booming laugh as he raised his can in a sloppy toast. Diane's face drained of color, her hands trembling as she set her glass down. I felt something inside me harden, a quiet click like a lock snapping shut. I looked at Connor, at his smirk, at the boy I had raised, and said calmly, "Point taken." Then I walked inside. The cool quiet of the house wrapped around me. I pulled out my phone and began making changes, my fingers steady. Connor's line, gone from my plan. His car insurance, canceled with the legal 10-day notice. Amazon Prime, Netflix, Spotify, removed. The emergency credit card I'd given him, closed. Even the $15,000 college fund I'd been contributing to quietly over years, I pulled it back into my account. It took less than 20 minutes. When I returned to the backyard, the laughter had resumed, the music rising again, but I felt like I was standing in a different world. I grabbed a beer, cracked it open, and leaned back into my chair. Connor didn't notice. Not yet, but he would. And when he did, it would change everything. The next morning, the storm arrived. I was in my home office, the steady hum of my computer filling the silence, when Connor barged in. His face was flushed, his voice already raised. "My phone's not working," he snapped, holding up the sleek iPhone I'd paid for. I didn't even glance up from my laptop. Not my problem. He blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "Just fix it." I leaned back in my chair, finally meeting his eyes. "I'm just your stepdad, remember? Your real dad can handle your phone bill. It's about $90 a month." I watched his expression shift like a storm cloud. Confusion, anger, then a flicker of panic. "You can't be serious." "Deadly serious. By the way, your car insurance cancellation notice is on the kitchen counter. You got 10 days to get your own policy." Connor's voice cracked as he shouted for his mother. "Mom, Mom." Diane appeared in the doorway, her face calm, her eyes steady. "What's going on?" "He canceled my phone. My insurance. He's controlling me, abusing me." Diane cut him off with a quiet firmness that silenced the room. "Tom paid for those things because he was acting as your parent. Yesterday, you made it clear he's not your parent. These are the consequences of your words, Connor." He stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like he was searching for an argument that wouldn't come. The days that followed were revealing. First came the guilt. Connor knocked on my door late at night, fake tears rolling down his cheeks. I didn't mean it like that. It was just a joke, okay? I didn't mean to hurt you. It wasn't a joke when you said it. I replied evenly, and it's not a joke now. You were clear about our relationship. I'm just respecting your boundaries. Then came the anger. Doors slammed. Accusations flew. He told Diane I was manipulative, cruel, trying to ruin his life. Diane never wavered. Respect goes both ways, she told him. But the real show began when his car insurance lapsed. Connor thought he was clever. He decided to keep driving, uninsured, convinced Roger would swoop him with money any day. Then one night, he got pulled over for a broken taillight, the same one I'd reminded him to fix for months. The officer ran his plates. No insurance. Connor got a $750 fine and watched his car get hooked to a tow truck, hauled away to the impound lot. Hours later, my phone buzzed. His name flashed on the screen. I answered. "I need you to come get me," he said, his voice shaking with fear. "Call your real dad." I did. He's not answering. Sounds like a you problem. Silence. Then the sound of him breathing heavy, like the world was suddenly heavier than he could carry. He hung up. He had to call Diane, who picked him up. But she was clear. It was a one-time rescue. The impound fee started at $200 plus $50 for every day the car sat there. Roger swore he'd cover it. But after 5 days, when the fees hit $450, Roger admitted he didn't have the money. Connor had to dip into his graduation cash, the money he thought would give him a cushion for college. He paid the fees, got his car back, and still couldn't legally drive it without insurance he couldn't afford. The cracks in his perfect world were showing. The confidence he wore at graduation had been replaced by something else. Panic, desperation, the weight of reality he'd never had to face. And the fall was just beginning. By late summer, Connor's carefully constructed image of independence had begun to crumble. The boy who had laughed at me in front of 100 people was now unraveling one thread at a time. College was supposed to be his escape, his fresh start. He had been accepted into a decent state school, nothing fancy but solid, a place where he could have thrived with the right support. And he would have had that support. I had planned to cover his meal plan, books, and most of his living costs. Nearly $3,000 a semester. Quietly, without fanfare, just like I had always done. But after the graduation party, that plan ended. Connor assumed Diane would step in. "Mom will cover it," he said confidently, like money simply appeared when he asked for it. Diane, bless her, didn't sugarcoat the truth. "Tom and I split expenses proportionally. He makes 3 times what I do, so he covers 75% of the household. Without his contribution to your college expenses, I can't afford it." Connor's jaw clenched, his voice rising. "So what am I supposed to do? Just not eat?" "Figure out," I said from across the room. "Adults do." His solution was loans. Easy enough to apply for, harder to secure. He needed a cosigner. 3 guesses who he didn't ask. He went to Roger instead. Roger showed up to the financial aid office reeking of weed, bloodshot eyes hidden behind scratched sunglasses. His credit score? 480. Declined on the spot. Connor was humiliated, but not humiliated enough to admit he had made the wrong choice. He settled for private loans with crushing interest, 12% on nearly $30,000 for the year. I watched from a distance as reality pressed down on him. When move-in day came, he expected me to rent a U-Haul, load the furniture, drive the 3 hours to campus. I didn't. He turned to Roger again. Roger said yes, then called the morning up to claim his truck had broken down. That truck had been dead for 3 years. Connor scrambled. Most companies wouldn't rent to a 19-year-old, but he found one shady lot willing to hand over a van for a $1,000 deposit, money he didn't have. In the end, Diane's little sedan made 3 trips, leaving half his things behind. The dorm he moved into was nothing like the cozy picture he had painted in his head. Fluorescent lights buzzing, thin carpet that smelled faintly of mold, walls covered in tack holes and chipped paint. His roommate's parents were there, unloading boxes and laughing as they decorated. They asked politely, "Is your dad on his way?" Connor stiffened. "No, He's on a cruise in Europe with my mom. The confusion on their faces was a knife twist he tried to hide, but I know it cut deep. Meanwhile, Diane and I were indeed on a cruise, celebrating our renewed vows. I posted photos of us sipping wine in Venice, standing on the cliffs of Santorini. Connor saw them on Facebook and texted Diane, bitter and angry. Must be nice spending my college money on vacation. Her response was sharp and unflinching. It was never your money. It was Tom's. You made it clear you don't want anything from him as a parent. Why would you expect his money? That reply left him quiet for days. But the real crash came when his loan money finally landed in his account. $30,000, more money than he'd ever seen in his life. And with no one to guide him, because he had pushed away the only person who would have taught him. He burned through it recklessly. $5,000 gone in less than a month. New clothes, a shiny laptop, dinner out every night, drinks for friends he barely knew. When he realized the money had to last a year, the panic set in. He called Diane, his voice frantic. I don't have enough left. What do I do? Maybe your real dad can help you budget, I said quietly from across the kitchen. Roger's advice? Just get a credit card for emergencies. Connor did. A $500 limit with 29% APR. He maxed it out in 4 days. And for the first time since the graduation party, I saw it, the fear in his eyes, the creeping realization that adulthood was no longer a choice, but a weight he couldn't shake off. And his real dad? He was nowhere to be found. By September, Connor's world was cracking at the seams. On the surface, he still tried to wear the same smirk he had at the graduation party, the one that said he had everything figured out. But beneath it, I could see him drowning. His car had been sitting uselessly in the driveway for weeks. The timing belt, the repair I had been planning to gift him before his little declaration, finally snapped. The repair quote was $2,200, more money than he had left after blowing through his loan disbursement. With no car, he lost his part-time job off campus. Without the job, the little safety net he thought he had vanished. At first, he tried to power through. He lived off ramen noodles, stale pizza crust his roommate didn't want, and whatever he could sneak from the dining hall. His shoulders began to slump. His voice lost the sharp edge it once had, and he started avoiding calls from the very friends who once envied his freedom. Then came the sickness. It started with a cough. Just a tickle in his throat at first, then deeper, harsher. Within a week, it had become a hacking cough that shook his body. By the time he finally admitted he was sick, it was more than a cold. It was bronchitis that slid into walking pneumonia. He couldn't sleep through the night without choking. His chest rattled with every breath. The campus health center wanted $200 just to see him. Another $60 for antibiotics. He didn't have it. His prepaid phone had already been shut off. He couldn't call me even if he wanted to, not directly. Instead, he called Roger. I later heard how that conversation went. Roger answered on the second try, voice groggy, like he'd just woken up at 2 p.m. Dad, I'm sick, like really sick. I need money for the doctor. There was a long pause. Then Roger sighed. Kid, I'm between jobs right now. Can't help. Maybe tough it out for a while. You're young. You'll bounce back. Connor tried to push. Dad, please. I can't breathe at night. I need medicine. I don't know what to tell you. Ask your stepdad. Then, as if mocking his own words, Roger laughed. Actually laughed. That laugh broke something inside Connor. When Diane told me all this later, her voice cracked. He's really sick, Tom. He's been coughing for 2 weeks. He sounds awful. I clenched my jaw. I had sworn I wouldn't step in again, not after the way he humiliated me in front of everyone. But I wasn't a monster. He might not want me as a dad, but I wasn't going to watch him wither away over a couple $100. I called the health center and paid anonymously. Never told him it was me. 2 days later, Connor dropped out of college. No announcement, no pride left to soften the blow. He just packed up what little he had left, broke his lease with his last $400, and came home. Back to Diane's house. My house, but not his home anymore. When Roger heard, his reaction was almost cruel in its indifference. College is a scam anyway. I never went and I'm fine. Fine. That was Roger's word for living in a dingy studio apartment, driving a 20-year-old truck that didn't start, scraping by on under-the-table cash jobs, and owing $30,000 in back child support he never intended to pay. Connor moved back and defeated. No car, no degree, no money. The kid who had once strutted through his graduation party, who thought he was untouchable, now rode the city bus at 5:45 every morning to stock grocery shelves for $15 an hour. And he didn't get to live here for free. I made it clear he was a tenant, not a son. He paid Diane $300 in rent each month. He got no Wi-Fi privileges, no access to family dinners unless specifically invited, and $10 per load if he wanted to use the laundry machines. He was living in a house, but always on the outside looking in. One night, he came to my office, a crumpled piece of notebook paper in his hand. A speech. I could tell he had rehearsed it. "Tom, I'm sorry," he began, his voice trembling. "I was stupid and ungrateful. I didn't mean it. I know you were there for me. I just..." "Stop." I held up my hand. "You weren't stupid, Connor. You made a decision. A clear one. You chose Roger as your father, and you made sure the whole world heard it. You don't get to take it back just because the consequences hurt." Tears streamed down his face. I didn't understand what it meant. "You're 19, I said quietly. You understood perfectly. You just thought you could have it both ways. Roger for the fun parts, and me for the bills. Life doesn't work like that." He stood there, broken, the weight of his choices pressing down like chains. For the first time in years, he looked like a child again. But the truth was he wasn't. He was an adult who had burned his bridge. And I wasn't going to rebuild it for him. Thanksgiving came early that year, or at least it felt that way. The air grew crisp, leaves crunched underfoot, and the smell of cinnamon and roasted turkey filled the neighborhood. Diane decorated the dining room with pumpkins and autumn garlands, setting the table for family. My nieces and nephews ran through the house, laughing, chasing each other, calling me Uncle Tom as they tugged at my sleeves. From his rented room upstairs, Connor watched silently. He could see my office from his window, the office where I worked long hours, the office where I spoke to family who still treated me with respect. He watched us laugh, eat together, exchange stories. But he wasn't part of it. Not anymore. Connor's high school friends came home from their colleges that weekend. They gathered in our backyard, comparing stories about dorm life, classes, parties, and the plans they had for spring break. They spoke about professors they loved, majors they were chasing, and adventures they couldn't wait to have. Connor sat with them for a while, nodding, forcing a smile. But the silence around him grew heavy. He had nothing to share. No classes, no campus, no car, no stories of freedom or success. After 20 minutes, he excused himself and left early. Diane later told me she found him curled up in bed, crying himself to sleep. Meanwhile, Roger didn't even call on Thanksgiving. Not a text, not a voicemail, not even a meme or joke he might have forwarded in the past. Nothing. The silence from the man he had declared as his real dad was louder than anything else. Connor tried once more to reach out to him the following week. His work boots had worn down to the sole from his long shifts at the grocery store. He texted Roger, asking for $50 to buy a new pair. The message was marked read. Roger never responded. That was the moment it all came full circle. Connor had chosen Roger for the title of father, but Roger never wanted the responsibility. What he wanted was the applause, the credit, the glory without the grind. And when the grind came, he vanished, as he always did. Connor was left with nothing but the echo of his own words. "You're just my stepdad." And me? I turned my focus where it belonged. On Diane, on my marriage, on the people who value me. The $15,000 I had been saving for Connor, the money I once imagined as a gift for his future, was redirected. Diane and I hired contractors to finally renovate the kitchen we had dreamed of for years. The smell of fresh wood, the shine of new countertops, the hum of brand new appliances, they were more than upgrades. They were a symbol, a reminder that my energy, my effort, my resources belonged where they were appreciated. Connor, from his small rented room, could see the workers carrying in new cabinets, hear the buzz of saws and drills, smell the paint drying. He had to walk past the gleaming kitchen every day, knowing what it represented. Not punishment, not revenge, just the natural consequence of choices. One night, Diane told me something that made me pause. Connor finally understands the difference between a father and a dad, she whispered. Roger is his father, but you were his dad, and he threw that away. I didn't reply, because deep down I already knew. In his room, on top of his dresser, Connor kept a single photo. It was from his high school graduation. He stood beside me, the watch I had given him still on his wrist, his smile wide, mine just as genuine. For a moment in time, he had been proud to stand next to me. He pawned that watch last month to pay for groceries, but he still keeps the photo. He looks at it every morning before taking the bus in the dark hours before dawn. And every morning, I imagine the same thought runs through his head. Was Roger worth it? Because the truth is simple. If Connor had just shown basic respect, just a hint of gratitude, he would have been in college right now. Debt-free, car running, supported, and with every door wide open. Instead, at 19 years old, he has $30,000 in defaulted student loans, no degree, no car, and no future that doesn't involve years of grinding poverty. The saddest part? He did it to himself. I can't say I don't care. I raised him for 6 years. Watching him struggle is like watching someone you once loved walk into a fire. But I also know this. Life is a series of choices. And the choice he made that day on the patio was clear. Point taken. I had told him. Now, 3 months later, the point has settled in deeper than I ever could have imagined. And the only person Connor is left to blame when he wakes up at 5 a.m. to catch the bus, when he eats ramen noodles while his friends enjoy dining halls, when he feels the sting of Roger's silence, is himself.